richtig aussprechen.
Ja, liebe Freundinnen und Freunde, ich darf nun unsere nächste Gastrednerin ankündigen. Sie kommt aus Irland. In Irland galt bis vor kurzem der 8. Verfassungszusatz. Dieser Verfassungszusatz hat Frauen den Zugang zu Schwangerschaftsabbrüchen verwehrt. Irland hatte das restriktivste Abtreibungsgesetz in der EU. Frauen, die einen Abbruch machen wollten, mussten nach Großbritannien fahren oder diesen Abbruch in der Illegalität vornehmen lassen, mit großen Gefahren für die Gesundheit der betroffenen Frauen. Und viele von euch haben es sicher mitbekommen, vor ein paar Monaten, da gab es in Irland ein Referendum. Dabei haben sich die Irinnen und Iren mit großer Mehrheit für eine Streichung dieses Verfassungszusatzes ausgesprochen. Liebe Freundinnen und Freunde, was für ein unfassbarer Erfolg für die feministische Bewegung, für Frauenrechte in Irland und in ganz Europa. Und diese Entscheidung, die war das Ergebnis eines langen feministischen Kampfes. Jahrelang haben sich Frauen stark gemacht dafür, dass Schwangerschaftsabbrüche legal werden, dass Frauen Zugang zu guter Gesundheitsversorgung und ein Recht auf Selbstbestimmung haben. Ich darf nun die nächste Gastrednerin ankündigen, Siona Cahill. Siona ist Präsidentin der irischen Studierendenvertretung. Sie engagiert sich für reproduktive Rechte, für die Ehe für alle, für die Gleichberechtigung von Männern und Frauen. Dass die Irinnen und Iren ihre Verfassung geändert haben, das ist auch dem großen Engagement von Siona zu verdanken. Liebe Freundinnen und Freunde, vor 100 Jahren erkämpften sich Frauen in Deutschland und in ganz Europa das Recht, wählen zu dürfen. 2018 erkämpften sich die Irinnen das Recht auf legale Schwangerschaftsabbrüche. Liebe Siona, wir freuen uns sehr, dass du heute hier bist. It's an honor to have you here. The stage is yours.
Guten Morgen. Germany, I can't quite believe that I'm standing before you here today, fresh out of the battle of our reproductive lives in Ireland. And to say fresh is probably overestimating it, because I'm actually tired. We're all still really tired. And throughout the months of the referendum campaign just gone by, I was genuinely held together by the makeup on my face, yes badges, and a whole lot of rage. My name is Siona Cahill. My pronouns are she and her. And I am the president of the Union of Students in Ireland, representing over 374,000 students across the island at the edge of Europe. I am here to tell you a good story, a story of a battle fought and won, amidst the battles we all have fighting across Europe when it comes to reproductive rights, diversity and inclusion. Our wins should be celebrated and shared, and it is an honour to be with you here today. Because just over 6 months ago, Ireland had one of the most restrictive constitutional bans on abortion in the world. And for weeks up to May 25th, 2018, if anyone asked me, how was it going? I replied, it will be tight. It will be fierce tight. And to be honest, I didn't know if we could do it. The official campaign, called Together for Yes, brought us over the line of removing the 8th Amendment in what looked like 4 months. But actually, Irish activists had been fighting for over 35 years. And I'm not going to attempt to tell you a 35-year story today. But what I will tell you is how I think we won it, because there are lessons learned that need to be shared. We won abortion rights in Ireland because we worked together, we told our stories, we persisted, and most importantly, we didn't make it about those who disagreed with us. We made it about the people that a ban on full reproductive rights affects: everyone. Not just one group, not just women, not just so-called aggressive feminists, everyone. Because in Ireland or in Germany, it's actually the same. Abortion access isn't about political theory. Reproductive rights are not an abstract argument to be won or lost. They are not part of a philosophical debate. They are about real people in real situations with real hard choices that need access to health care with dignity and without judgment. That is what it is about. And that's what you make it about. And you don't give up. You don't give in. You stick with it, even now, even here. Because we're at a moment, one that I think we need to recognise for what it is. And it's a dangerous moment. It's a dangerous moment in Europe. One in which we could easily get complacent. Because if you accept that politics is a theatre, we need to be the ones to write the next act and not let rising conservative narratives do that for us. We are not just the actors. We are not just the actors in Europe. And that takes energy. It takes commitment. And Ireland was a good example of both of those. We decided to write our own script and not be told anymore how we were supposed to feel, or how things were supposed to be, or how things had always been. This year, the people of Ireland unapologetically made history. In some ways, it was a quiet revolution. A culmination of decades upon decades of silent stories. But in the end, the revolution was one that politicians could not ignore any longer. Political inertia had to end and politicians had to finally listen, because we wouldn't shut up. Back in 1983, before I could vote, indeed before anyone who was now under 50 in Ireland could vote at the time, the 8th Amendment was strategically inserted into the Irish Constitution in order to effect this complete ban. The criminalisation of abortion flowing from this forced thousands upon thousands of Irish people to travel to the UK for abortion care. That was 12 people a day on average from Ireland. In recent years, women were also increasingly using illegal abortion pills found online, taking them in their homes, alone, with no medical support, telling no one, for fear, for stigma, for judgment, for shame. And in either case, we faced up to 14 years imprisonment if we were caught. It's not good enough, and it wasn't good enough for us anymore. In the 1990s, student leaders before me were dragged through the courts in Ireland for defying the law and printing and circulating illegal information about abortion. In fact, there's a comparison to here now in Germany, where your doctors are being criminalised, and that could potentially mean a chilling effect on information people have access to. That's not good enough for you. So back in the 1990s in Ireland, it was a time when women's magazines from the UK were being burned in Dublin airport because they had information and numbers about abortion. And later pages at the back of Irish editions were blacked out. This is the kind of stuff that was going on. So students challenged those laws on basic censorship. And we set up our own helplines, we printed our own materials, and we took the law into our own hands. Young people, generation after generation, have led the way on the conversations that were needed. We highlighted constantly the intrinsic moral conflict between having something in our constitution which governed our wombs unlike any other part of our bodies. Young people didn't lead the way here out of some act of teenage rebellion or because it was a cool thing to do, though it was also a cool thing to do. Young people didn't lead this so that we could lead flippant lives without any consequences. Young people led this and came home to vote in their thousands upon thousands from across Europe and from across the world, because we refused to be silenced any longer by what is a grave injustice and vestige of a dark past in which the way to control our women was by limiting healthcare and limiting access to decision-making. And then, in 2012, Savita Halappanavar passed away in an Irish hospital, having been denied an abortion which would have prevented the sepsis that ended up taking her life. A woman died, and a switch was flicked. But how is it that we have to wait for something and for things to get that bad for someone to die before the state does something? For years at this point, we had sought to bring about our conservative political establishment on an educational journey, to show them the harms to women in a healthcare framework, through the courts, including the European Court of Human Rights, through relentless human rights advocacy, before every expert international human rights monitoring body we could think of. And in 2012, those who before then hadn't understood their need to be visible on this issue in Ireland began to come out, began to emerge. Grassroots organisers, many of whom who had faced down the referendum original battle in 1983, came back to continue the fight, along with many more who had never voted on the issue. The Abortion Rights Campaign, a non-hierarchical organisation, began to build community groups in every corner of Ireland, bringing people together. The Coalition to Repeal the Eighth Amendment engaged with advocacy groups around disability, migrant rights, students and political parties. The National Women's Council connected with women the length and breadth of Ireland and demonstrated that this issue wasn't for other women, it was for everyone. Amnesty International came on board and lent its weight to the calls for reform of the law as a matter of human rights. A group of women and their partners who had experienced fatal fetal anomalies bravely told their stories and demanded parliamentary attention. Thousands upon thousands of repeal jumpers were created and worn by supporters across Ireland. The movement was now visible. So slowly, painstakingly, we made our way in Ireland through a process towards a referendum. And there weren't always tangible wins. There aren't always tangible wins. We all know, but we didn't tire. So in 2017 then, the state convened what's called a Citizens' Assembly, a group of randomly selected Irish citizens who examined the Eighth Amendment and its consequences on pregnant people in Ireland. The people of this assembly listened to human rights lawyers and international organisations, from academics, from practitioners of abortion care, and from many anti-choice organisations, including the churches. And yet, with evidence, the people concluded that we needed to change the law in Ireland, so it was game on for referendum. Our campaign in Ireland met people where they were at on the issue. We addressed their concerns. We engaged with people's discomfort about abortion, and we connected with them and their values. We talked about compassionate, dignified healthcare, and we made it an issue for everyone. Yet during the height of the campaign, it often seemed like everything was against us. The church, the money, oh, the money. The anti-abortion opposition globally saw Ireland as a battle they couldn't and wouldn't lose. So many leading figures and politicians in Ireland stayed neutral, or organisations refusing to publicly take sides, even though they were with us. The media insistence that abortion was intractably difficult and divisive. We were told that Middle Ireland, taxpayers, young families, were against us by default. The media, in an attempt to show balance, seems to blindly publish statements that were inaccurate, misleading, ideologically infactual, and we were the ones accused of being rash, being aggressive, being screechy, typical women. But some of the hardest work we faced was internal. It's the part people, parties, campaigns rarely talk about. But I think let's name it now, because it's the part that I believe that if you don't work on consistently, you may fail in your objectives before you really get going. Because campaigns, as you know, of any kind, have the vision of their end goal. In Ireland, it was reproductive rights and the removal of the 8th Amendment. But the people involved in such a movement can have different approaches, different visions. And every campaign struggles to be inclusive and to not exclude those most marginalised by a problem or a current law, in order to make what you're selling mainstream enough so that people will accept it. People with disabilities, migrants, trans and non-binary people. That is a challenge to a campaign, but it is imperative that we do not forget it. Because in our collective political work for rights and protections, in the work for what is right, we must ensure that we do it the right way. That might be left. So our response was to batten down, to work harder and work together. Political differences were set aside internally and externally. We knew we were on the right side of history, but that we needed to make sure people saw that. We took nothing for granted. And it was a matter of making sure that our silent supporters voted yes as well. Abortion was still so heavily stigmatised that people were afraid to say how they were voting. And yet, when we got engaged with people's hearts and minds, we knew they were listening to people's stories and the real lives of those affected. And we knew more and more that people felt it wasn't their right to judge, that they may never want or need abortion care, but it wasn't their right to prevent anyone else from accessing it. Instead, we said someone you love might need your yes, and sometimes a private matter needs public support. And despite tight polling, more and more people came out canvassing. I canvassed with my 85-year-old granny. It became an intergenerational conversation, and we didn't make the campaign about responding to those who were against us. Increasingly, this debate wasn't about two sides. That's what we identified, and actually, I believe that's how we won. We got the message across that the only radical notion is that this affects everyone. And no one else, no politician, should be able to tell me what I do with my body, or how I access my healthcare, or how I make my decisions. They should only care that I have the best information and the best support. That's what's radical, the radical notion, the same as feminism, that women are people and we have a right to make our own decisions. So there is a reason we are all in this room today in Leipzig. It's because we believe in something. We believe in something. We know that regression in access to healthcare of any kind hurts people. It's hurting people now. And we believe in that big but simple idea that unless we have full decision-making power over our bodies and our lives, there is no freedom. So when no one else shows leadership, when there is political inertia, you have stood up. When no one else speaks out or elevates the voices of those who are marginalised, disadvantaged or cut out, you are the ones who have stood up. It is the volunteers, it is the activists, it's the members of Die Groenen and people giving a shit. That is what makes change. You do that. It's not up to someone else. It's up to us collectively. And some of our most important work isn't done behind megaphones or at marches or giving speeches. It's in the conversations and the changing of minds. It's over kitchen tables when we call out discrimination or fact check or challenge the status quo. It's when we proudly say that we are feminists, not because we just wear the badge or the t-shirt, because we live the values and we are open to new conversations and new thinking too. The important work is in the bar even when you're drinking your definitely only German-made beer. It's often in the hidden, thankless work that makes a movement and a party tick. It is in that thankless work that the thanks comes when we get the right people elected, when we support our women and when we support our minorities. Because we all need to be creating space, not just taking space. We need to recognise talent and good people and give them the platform to represent us. So to the social justice warriors among you, to those who are considered shrill tweeters, to those of you who may ever have been accused of being a snowflake, I say keep being difficult, keep resisting, keep defying. It's not easy. And people who upset the status quo are usually not icons or revolutionaries until after their time. But you must go hell for leather on gender equality, on reproductive rights, on getting the right people elected, and not be apologetic for it. And when the time comes, consider the shot the only shot, and don't wait for the next one. And when the time comes, you must be ready as a party to listen, to have difficult conversations, to be challenged, to be educated, and then to lead. On the 25th of May 2018, 1,429,981 people in the Republic of Ireland voted an overwhelming majority for change. "87% of those aged between 18 and 25 voted yes. But our vote crossed generations, because a Pandora's box had been opened in our country of our stories, of our truth, and Ireland would be changed utterly going forward. That didn't come about in just 4 months of sweaty canvassing, leafleting, community organising, and young people calling their grannies, although that is what took it over the line. It came over decades, by people on the front lines, by people who didn't give up, by people who are called radical feminists. But basic equality isn't that radical at all. It should never be taken for granted. Thank you.
So, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Siona. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the inspiring words. But even more, thanks that you made history, not just for Ireland, but for all women in Europe. And now, together for yes, together for a European women's wave in Europe, we keep on fighting. Thanks that you came to Leipzig.